Hello everyone and welcome to another wonderful game from round 4 of the 2021 US Chess Championship. It's a game that will surely improve your Sunday as it's a wonderful miniature, but also it will remind you how cruel chess can be sometimes. So without further ado, it's Robson versus Jeffery Xiong. Xiong not having the greatest tournament so far, lost his 2 previous games. Robson is doing very, very well. So let's see how this game turns out. Robson with the white pieces opens with e4. We have c5 by Xiong going for the Sicilian defense, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5 now. Pretty much everyone now goes for the Nimzovich-Rossolimo attack. We have e5, and now white just castles. We often mention that you can't really go for this pawn because it's, doesn't matter what you capture with. For example, d captures, knight captures, queen d4 attacks the knight and the pawn, so black can win his pawn easily and equalize or even become better. So here white just castles, and now bishop to d6 guarding the pawn. So for the moment the d pawn is blocked, you can't really move it, but this is all worked out, so you don't have to worry about it. We have c3 now, preparing to strike in the center with d4. We have a6 challenging the bishop, bishop to a4, and b5 now. Now you could go back to b3, then black will attack it again, and then to c2, or you could go to c2 right away, which is what Robson does. We have knight g to e7. Now you can castle, you can execute f5, and now we have a4. What we usually do when black has a nice expansion on the queen side, we of course undermine it with a pawn push like a4. Black plays b4, and now rook to e1. So the black king is still in the center of the board, and you should consider castling at some point, but maybe if you castle now, then d4 can be somewhat annoying. But also, instead of castling, just queen to c7 is a known move here, so you could play that. You could play anything here, really. But in the game, knight to g6 was played by Xiong, and it is now, as of move 9, that we have a completely new game. So white says, all right, since your king is still in the center of the board, let's for the moment keep it there. We're going to play d4, and now usually black will just capture on d4 when white plays this, but here we have a b captures on c3, and this gives white an idea on how to keep the black king in the center of the board a little bit longer. First, d captures on e5, and now already there's a problem because your bishop on d6 is hanging, so you have to do something about this. But first, c captures on b2. We're gonna go after white's rook on a1. So bishop captures on b2, and now again black's bishop on d6 is hanging, and you have to decide whether you want to go for the pawn or do you want to play bishop back to c7. Bishop back to c7 or even e7 are the safe choices here. But Xiong boldly goes for the pawn. He plays bishop captures on e5, and now we have knight captures on e5, knight g captures on e5, bishop captures, knight captures, and now queen to d5. After this capture fest, we go after the knight and the rook on a8. So still keeping the black king in the center of the board. Knight to c6 is the only move that parries both threats. So knight to c6, and only now we claim our pawn back. So queen captures on c5 prevents the black king from castling. So what do you do here? Well, you could try bishop to d7, continuing development, but it's very hard to leave your king in the center of the board like this. So Xiong offers a queen trade with queen to e7, and Robson just trades. We have queen captures, king captures, now saying that I'm not interested in castling, the queens are off the board, better to keep my king in the center of the board for more activity. And okay, knight to c3, we want to get this knight to d5, it's an excellent square, and the black plays knight to b4, kind of stopping this, but also attacking the bishop on c2. So knight to d5 check. We're still gonna play this. Now you have to capture the knight, otherwise you're gonna lose the knight on b4. So knight captures on d5, e captures on d5, opening up a discovery from the rook. And now, do you go back or do you go forward with something like king to d6? King to d6 could be maybe a little bit too much, because even though you go after this pawn, let's say we play rook 8 to b1. What is your king really doing on d6? If you capture the pawn, bishop to e4 check loses the rook here. So although it's possible to go king to d6, it looks a bit too adventurous. So king back to d8 was played. You don't want to play king to e8 because you really want to develop this rook. So king to d8 is the only option here, and now comes d6. We reached the position from the thumbnail, and now you can see how it's not all that easy for black to continue developing. For example, if bishop to b7, we can go after the bishop, rook 8 a8 to b1. And if bishop to c6, we play rook to e7. It's going after this pawn, and the white will always be more active and better in this position. So instead, after d6, white played a5, maybe with the idea of developing the bishop to this long diagonal. So now bishop to d3. We stop this, and we have many options here to continue the game with the rook. So here we have rook to b8, bishop to a6. The move that was kind of planned here still works. We can just play bishop to a6, trade bishops, and go for this kind of an endgame. For example, bishop to a6. Now white trades, for example, captures, and now you can play even rook to b1. You don't have to worry about this capture because you might blunder the rook here. So it's never easy for black to deal with this d6 pawn, and it really restrains the movements of the black king. But in the game, after bishop to d3, rook to b8 was played, and now Robson just goes for rook a to b1. Now goes after the rook here. And what do you play here? The problem with just trading, for example, although of course it can be played, rook captures, what do you play now? You always have to worry about ideas like rook to b8, bishop to a6, going after this c8 bishop. Your king can't really move. And if you play rook to e8, you want to really activate it. Now we're going to play g3, not allow any back rank ideas. And after a move like rook to e5, now we're going to play rook to b8. Of course, we're going to threaten bishop to e6. So rook to c5, adding a defender here, and now bishop to a6. And now it seems like black defended, the rook is out of the game, but this king can never go anywhere, the bishop can't move, and the rook has to keep an eye on the bishop at all times. And now it's not that difficult for white to make progress. For example, rook c6, we can just kick away the rook. We don't really care. If rook back to c1 check, we can just play here. And now black is pretty much stuck making moves with the rook, and we're just gonna start improving the position of our king. For example, king here, doesn't really matter how many times you check us. Now we finally get to d5, and we trade everything here. Captures, king c5, we're gonna pick up this pawn and easily win the king and pawn endgame. So that's the problem with the black king being stuck like this, and it's very easily for white to completely pin down black's pieces. So here we have rook to b7. Xiong says, all right, if you capture, I can now nicely develop my light square bishop, and of course I don't have to worry about moves like bishop to a6 because I just capture on b1, and after you capture I can simply win a piece here. So after rook to b7 we have rook e to c1, now putting more pressure here on black's queen side, and now you don't really have any other options. Now you have to capture here and then continue playing similar to the line that we just discussed, but now okay, the pair of rooks is off the board. For example, rook to e8, g3, and now after rook to e6, going after the pawn, we're going to play rook to b6. And black is fighting, but white is still better. However, after rook e to c1, Xiong played rook to b4, saying now, okay, if you capture, I'm going to have a passed pawn on b4 already, but this move allows white to go for a very tricky idea. So feel free to pause the video and win the game for white while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on achieving this beautiful Sunday miniature. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's of course rook captures on b4. Yes, it seems simple, but it just works. The problem is the passed a pawn will be unstoppable. So a captures on b4. Now a5 was played. We have bishop to b7. If you try bringing the rook into the game because you really want to do this for the entire game, it's too slow. We're going to play a6, rook to e5. Now try and get behind the pawn, but now rook to a1, and there's no stopping the passed pawn. That's just game. So instead, after a5, bishop to b7 was played. At least you can put your bishop on a8 to prevent the promotion. a6, now as the bishop already nicely covers this, bishop to a8, and then now a7, and it was in this position on move 28 that Jeffery Xiong resigned the game, and a wonderful victory for Ray Robson in round 4 of the United States Chess Championship. And this means that he is now the sole leader after 4 rounds, followed by I think 5 or 6 people are on 2.5 points. He's the only one on 3 points, and here you resign because there is no defense. Whatever you play here, well, there really isn't all that much you can play. You can maybe try and bring the rook into the game. Now we're just gonna play bishop to a6. And how do you stop this checkmate? There's no way to do it. If you play bishop to c6, we just temporarily sacrifice a queen. Of course, this is with the check, so it's forced. After bishop captures, we're going to deliver rook to c8 checkmate, and that's it. So really, a wonderful miniature that went horribly bad for black very, very quickly. But that's just the thing. And you should never underestimate a move like. Let me just rewind a little bit. This move, like D6, it's such a powerful move. It seems like maybe you've advanced it a bit too much because you have a light square bishop and this is now a dark square. How are you going to defend it if the black rooks go after it? But that's just it. The black rooks will never be able to go after it, and just crippling the black king like this is what made this miniature possible. Because even though probably Xiong could have played a little bit better, it's so difficult to find the moves in positions like these when your opponent just completely stifles you. So yeah, maybe something to keep in mind, maybe to use in your own games, and see what happens. But yeah, that's the game. Congratulations to Ray Robson for this brilliant win and for taking lead in the US Chess Championship 2021. I would like to wish a very happy birthday to Natalia, and I would like to thank Olga the Dinosaur, David Kimura, Ravindra Joglkar, and Bimal Tapa for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the US Chess Championship, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent Sunday.